Welcome back to Interconnected. I'm Jordan Saunders, and I'm so glad you're here. Today, before we dive in, I am so excited for our next guest. We're diving into something most people don't even think about until it directly impacts them or someone they love. It's a conversation that will challenge the way you see the world around you. And I am looking forward to introducing our next guest. Have you ever walked into a space and something feels off? Not because necessarily it's messy or outdated, but because something just doesn't work for you. So maybe the chairs are too low, maybe the music's too loud, or the layout may not feel right. It could be frustrating. But for you, it may just be a moment and you adjust and you move on. But imagine if that was every day, if you had to experience that every day. And for so many people with disabilities, sensory sensitivities, or mobility challenges, the world isn't built for them. It's built around them. Disability isn't the barrier, the environment is. But what if we change that? Imagine starting and designing spaces that made life easier, more comfortable, more empowering. And that's exactly the vision of today's guest. LeeAnna is redefining the way we think about design, and I can't wait for you to hear her insights. She's a two-time cancer survivor, a wife, a mom, and an advocate who is reshaping the way that we think about inclusive spaces. She grew up watching her brother with Down syndrome and her father, who later transitioned to using a wheelchair, navigate a world that wasn't designed for them. And instead of accepting that, she asked, how do we make this better? Her journey started in speech therapy as a speech language pathologist assistant and helping people communicate and regain independence. And then she had the realization, one that changed everything. Because you can give someone all of the skills in the world, but if the environment is working against them, they're still going to struggle. And so she led her to launch Sensory Style Company, a company that's changing how we look at spaces and making sure that they are inclusive. So I will turn it over to LeeAnna. Welcome and thank you for being here. And I wanted you to share a little bit about yourself and also where you are located.
Awesome. Thank you, Jordan, so much for that intro. For people who are unable to watch and can only listen, I'm wearing a black and white striped shirt. I'm in my house. Behind me is like my propagation station because I love plants. and I have curly purple hair, and that changes sometimes. So when the budget lets me. But aside from that, outside of me, I grew up in South Texas, and I then went to college in North Texas because Texas is that big. After I graduated, I went back to South Texas, started working a little bit. Then I got married. And side note, it kind of prefaces to where I'm at now currently, but I am a hobby singer. And so I was trained in classical voice for 20 years. And when I got married, my husband's job took us to Arizona. So, however, when he took the job on and he was interning, he said, I can only take this job if there's a chance I can essentially relocate to Austin, Texas. And it was very interesting. He was like, the person I plan to propose to is dead set to live there one day. And he said, so I need to be able to transfer eventually. So even though we made it to Arizona for a few years, we made it back to the homeland. And now we're settled in Austin, Texas. And I've always had a yearning of wanting to be here since all of my little singing competitions. If you were good enough, you got a free trip to state. And that was always in Austin. And Austin's motto is keep Austin weird. And it's really funny because every time I came to compete and I got to walk around the town, everyone was so welcoming. Every space was so inviting. And everyone was willing to sit down and talk to you and have such an intellectual and intriguing conversation. And I think that was one of the other aspects that I loved about Austin, and that I think was just also in me of wanting to welcome people into so many spaces. And I'm an avid learner. I love learning, and I love personal development, and I love growth. I love seeing that in other people, and I love learning from other people. And I'm a weird science geek also. I love data. I love having a problem to solve, and I love just watching something over time progress in different ways and adjusting and problem solving. So yeah, that's a little bit about me and how I landed in Austin, which is wild.
Well, that's incredible in terms of just your story and how you ended up in Austin. And thanks for giving us more context too. Someone may be watching too, and like, do you have that moment where it just became, when it went from rearranging rooms to, okay, this is bigger than just rearranging rooms? Can you take us back to that moment? I know you touched on it a little just now, but what was the driver? What were some of the things that were happening? Or was there one space that may have gone from you just rearranging the room to a moment of, I really want to do this because it's bigger than just rearranging a room? It's really changing someone's life.
Definitely. There was a lot of moments that led up to that, right? And I think that I definitely was hitting in speech world, we know it as plateauing, right? For some people, there comes a point where they might see a plateau. And to me, I always consider it an inner pass. Like it's just a way for where we're going to go a different route potentially than the one we had planned. And so those moments kept coming to me when I was realizing that even within my speech career, spaces kept arising and it kept energizing me in a lot of different ways. And I think it was within my patients and my clients. It started in the home health when I was in Arizona, and we were getting a lot of referrals, but they were all wanting to work with only me. And so my bosses were like, they're mentioning they only want to work with you, and we have a stream of a team that needs people. And they're saying that you're doing speech, but you're doing something more. So what more are you doing that wants them to come? And I didn't even know what it was, the more that I was doing at that moment. But it kept coming. Even when I was in a clinic and it was doing executive functioning skills, and then a parent would be like, getting ready for school in the morning is the hardest thing in the world. How do we do this? How do we work on our spatial memory? And I'm like, send me a picture of the kid's room or the bathroom, the space. Let's figure this out. And so I was just, as a speech therapist, I understood as someone who's personally experienced living with people with disabilities, and also as a speech therapist in both realms of living in it versus working in it. And so working in it, I know 30 minutes or 1 hour a week isn't going to bring the progress that some parents are striving to see or caregivers are striving to see. And so I would always push myself to go beyond the therapy room in a lot of ways. How can we make this last longer? How can we get this progress continuous for them? And so I think that's when I was starting to be in their spaces, working in their routines, working in their systems, and realizing this is where it's meant to go. Yeah, it was just was some of those moments where I was seeing that parents were coming back to me with, this is helping us as a family now. We're able to come to dinner together now. It's not in the traditional manner, but we're coming and it's happening and it's consistent and this is great and we're progressing and we're talking more at the table. And so it was just those moments where I'm realizing they're having that connection now, and it's in their own way, and it's in their quality of their lives are improving and enhancing from that. And it's carrying over to as they develop and age as well, which was exciting to see for a lot of my patients.
Well, it's interesting you said the piece about the impact not only on the client that you may have been working with, but also the families, and how empowering that must have been for a parent or a caregiver to say, not only when you come and provide this therapy is it helpful, but you've actually provided us tools in a way that we can still incorporate things with the design of how you move that chair or lower lighting, and how those different things could empower a caregiver to feel that they have tools to be able to support in some area for their child or whoever it may be. That's huge because it's something that we may not think of, because when we think of therapy, it's this person has the skill set and expertise, and I have to wait for this person to come, but there's not as much that I can do to be able to support this because maybe I don't feel confident to be able to use this, or I'm not sure what to do in this situation. So you are not only providing them those tools with just like how you arrange the rooms, but also too the purpose behind it as well. So that kind of transitions because you said a few different things. Other things that you said were you were energized and it was something that you didn't realize you were doing. And it's really relatable because there's certain things, and maybe someone's watching, and there's certain things that you do and you're energized by it. And then there's certain things that you do too that you may be energized by and that you may unconsciously even know that you're doing. And so you stated that you went to different design firms and you tried to get them to see the same energy you felt about this. Hey, this can really make an impact. Wouldn't you love me to come on board or consult or provide these services or add to the services you all had? And you experienced some pushback. Can you talk a little bit about that experience and also what made you not stop there and think, okay, maybe I don't need to continue on this path? What allowed you to push forward?
Mm. Yeah, that was quite a journey in itself too, because I I definitely took a year before biting the bullet to leave the speech therapy field, and I I definitely meditated a lot each day during that time, and I worked under a couple of professional organizers and interior designers as well to make sure this was all aligning, and they supported me in a lot of ways. They understood my niche, they understood what I could bring to the table, but their uncertainty of how to navigate or how to sell me or how to market me was their hardest sell. And it was a great idea. Everyone would say, this is great, but I don't know how to sell that. And I don't know how to market that. And I don't know what audience to go to, where to go to. It would be all you. And so I think there always comes a point when you have that inner feeling of knowing this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And then I think it also happens where there's an angry moment. Because anger is a good feeling. It can push you to go past that fear and in those moments. And I think that when I was getting that pushback from different firms of like, I could expand your market and I can offer this niche that's growing and developing. And I think for me, it was that moment of having to sit with my feelings and understand that I've had this feeling before when it was for things I had to do for myself, and I was able to overcome it and push past it. And so for me, my biggest understanding is, how can I be of service to others? And so when I had that feeling of fear of starting my own business from the ground up, I was like, this is for the others now. And so I really had to push forward and start working towards this company, and letting people understand that I exist now. And I think also, in a sense of going to those firms and being excluded, was also a bit of a parallel to how different people in these environments are being excluded no matter what. And so if it's too much for them to understand and do, it's not too much for me to do. And so I think that I can't do it alone, obviously. But there will be other people along the way that are going to come in and join, and it'll work. And I think I had to trust in that process, that it's gonna come and it's gonna work out.
Yeah, that's good in terms of your journey, but also to what you said about the value that you provide for those you're serving others. And that right there is the core, really. If you look from a business standpoint, you're serving someone in some capacity, depending on who it is. It may change depending on your business, but um that is a huge driver as well. From a business side, and you state it from both perspectives, there is a business owner watching who wants to do more or make every customer feel welcome. Maybe they're a designer and they're realizing more, my space may not be as inclusive, or maybe there's some small changes that I can make. So what would you say to that person right now that may be watching, that may feel overwhelmed because if they feel like they have to add more, what would you say to them about a simple change that they could do today to create a more accessible space?
That's a good question. What's a small thing they can do to make a space more accessible? I think for any business owners who want to start taking steps to be more inclusive, is to have a good understanding of the employee you want to work with and that you want in your business, and understanding also why it matters to you to be inclusive of new employees outside of that image that you have. And so I think there's a mindset you have to shift. Originally, I think that's everyone's initial small change they can do, is have a mindset of who you think you want to have in your team, and then go beyond that, and how it can be even more impactful from their perspective and their life situations. And I think a more direct way to make an impact is entries. I think entryways in any residential, any commercial, speaks volumes to people with disabilities in so many ways, because they're not at your doorstep, and they're actually in with you, and they're able to share a space with you. I think that is the best place to start, is making sure wherever someone takes their first step into your business, that they feel welcomed and that they're catered to in that way.
Yes, the entryways. That's good, because of the fact that if you're not able to even get into the space, that's a huge barrier that excludes so many people. My question to you next would be like, who are the types of businesses that work with you? I wanted to know, what are the types of businesses that you work with? Is it more individual clients, one-on-one, or is it commercial businesses?
Definitely. That's a good question. So I have worked with residential and commercial clients. And so I I obviously have more residential experience, but I do have commercial experience under my belt, which is great. Clients that I'm gearing towards or marketing towards now is the user that I'm targeting is families with teens, adults, and even seniors. Because another thing that I noticed that within this niche was that a lot of people focused on child development and creating playrooms, bedrooms, fun little sensory spots and things in a home. And then as they got older or their diagnoses changed, or maybe they got a late diagnosis in life, because that always happens with women on the spectrum who get diagnosed very late in their life, there's minimal supports for them on how to help their spaces. And so those are definitely the target people. I want to fill that gap where they're not forgotten. And so different partners I'm looking at now is caregiver groups and different outpatient therapy clinics as well, and even senior living communities, because those are all big transitional ways where they're having to interact or carry over different goals and spaces back to either their businesses or to their homes. And a lot of people work from home as well. And so yeah, those are kind of the people I'm aiming towards in that way.
Yeah, the older, you're right, because a lot of times younger, there may be more support if someone's younger and in spaces, and as you age, you're able to provide that where there's a barrier or maybe there's gaps where the support is still needed. I wanted to find out, how can people follow your work, and if they're interested in learning more about your work, how can they contact you? What are the best ways?
Definitely. So you can directly email me um, at sensorystyleco@gmail.com, or you can visit our website to learn a lot more, sensorystylecompany.com. You can check out or subscribe on my YouTube. It's slowly growing there as well, and Instagram, of course. Those are like the trinity of ways to do contact. But I'm on all social platforms, like at Sensory Style Co. on any social platform, pretty much. But yeah, contact wise, those are probably the best spots for sure.
Okay, yeah, I think I actually found you on Instagram. I saw one of your organizing videos. And
Oh yeah,
yeah, I
nice.
was
Yeah. Oh, LinkedIn also, of course, for like my business owners who are ready to get their office in check.
yes. Well, thank you so much for taking the time, for sharing your story and the impactful work that you're doing. I'm so glad that we were able to have this conversation.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Jordan. I'm glad we got to connect.
Yes. All right. Thank you all. If you're watching, thank you so much for tuning in, and we will see you next time.